Good Monday evening, HBCU family. Welcome to another live edition of HBCU Sports. I am Chris Stevens. To my left is Jared Hoffman, and we've got a packed show for you all today. And we're going to start with the big news of today. And I'll let Jared let you guys tell you. I'll let Jared tell you all about that. The Florida A&M quarterback situation. Jared.
Well, we got a lot of quarterback news coming into the MEAC SWAC challenge that's taking place this Saturday. Florida A&M has announced their starter. For people in the know, this is probably not a surprise, but for those who are not in the know, it is Florida Atlantic and Central Michigan transfer Daniel Richardson, who will be taking over as the starting quarterback for Florida A&M in week one. He is replacing Jeremy Musa, who was the SWAC Offensive Player of the Year last year. Daniel Richardson he played 4 seasons at Central Michigan and a year at Florida Atlantic. The last 3 years, he has been the team's starter. He had a breakout year in the 2021 season, had 2,600 yards, had 24 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions that year. And last year, he had another 2,000-yard season, 2,001 yards, completed 60% of his passes, scored 13 touchdowns, but threw 10 interceptions. So kind of not really shocking that he took that starting role. He claims the role over guys like returning backup Junior Maradovich, which take your hats off to him because he's been with the team since 2021 and has seen Rashawn McKay come through the door and have the starting role, and had most recently Jeremy Musa had the come in and take the starting role ahead of him, and all the while didn't enter the transfer portal. And while I'm saying that, he's probably putting together his letter to say that he's in the transfer portal, but up until now, he has been content with sticking it out with Florida A&M and understanding that it's more about his education than getting the playing time on the field. And again, it's going to look so bad if he enters the transfer portal after this, but just him sticking it out and sticking with the team and getting his education, that's the most important part for him. So hats off to him for sticking it out. But he gets lapped again, and I don't want to say again, but he gets lapped by Richardson, and he claims the starting role ahead of the MEAC SWAC challenge.
And of course, this was the biggest decision that James Colsey's had to make up until this point as the new head man at Florida A&M. How important was it for him to not let this decision, in your opinion, linger? Because a lot of coaches, the late John Madden used to say, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you really don't have none. So now that Colsey has been able to name his guy, how important was it, in your opinion, for him to be able to do that ahead of the MEAC SWAC challenge, so there's not any question about how Florida A&M is going to roll into Atlanta on Saturday?
It's interesting because, Jackson State did the same thing last year. They were moving on from Shedeur Sanders, who we all know where he is now. And he had a quarterback battle on his hand and had to keep his starting quarterback. He kept, and TC Taylor, TC Taylor kept who their starting quarterback was going to be close to the hip. People thought it was there was Zy McDonald, there was Jason Brown, who could have potentially had that starting role. Eventually, he went with Jason Brown, but he announced it very late, and it paid dividends. They went in there and they beat up on South Carolina State in the MEAC SWAC challenge. So I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. I'm pretty sure Norfolk State was going to be prepared, whether it was Daniel Richardson, whether it was Junior Maradovich, or whether it was any other guys who were in contention for that starting role. Is there an advantage to keeping that who's going to be your starting quarterback close to the hip? Absolutely, because there are teams who have quarterbacks like an Andrew Body who can be mobile out of the pocket, so the defense doesn't know if you're going to be prepared for a pocket passer this week, or if they're going to be prepared for a guy who can move outside the pocket and maneuver and make plays with his feet as opposed to with his arms. So there are advantages to doing that. But in Daniel Richardson's case, he's very much a pocket passer. So I think you pretty much know that who you're going to have to deal with. I think the offensive line, there's a lot of speculation about who's going to be on the offensive line. For not a lot, but there's going to be some speculation about how that cohesiveness between Daniel Richardson and that offensive line is going to work out. So you were going to have to deal with stuff like that anyway. If you're Norfolk State, that chemistry between the offense. So I'm not sure in this case how much it would have helped, but there are advantages to it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. And it seems that, for continuity's sake, because Musa, from what I saw from him last year, he really wasn't that much of a runner either. So it seems like, it feels like for continuation's sake, they're just going to have a pocket pass. And Richardson obviously can sling it. And when you have guys on that can run out of the backfield like Kelvin Dean Jr., who obviously was the Celebration Bowl offensive MVP last year. He's more of a running back, but he was also he can catch the ball as well. So, they'll figure it out. I mean, it's going to be a fun match. What really intrigues me about Florida A&M is how that defense is going to rebuild itself. That black cloud that was among, if it wasn't the top defense in FCS last year, it was definitely top 2 or 3. And they lost a lot of guys to either graduation, some are in the NFL right now, which we love to see, and the transfer portal. So I'm really interested to see how that defense is going to shake out. I think the offense will be fine in due time, but I really want to see how because that defense, I don't want to say it carried them last year, but it definitely played a huge part in probably the most successful Florida A&M season in a generation.
Yeah, but just to talk about that offense a little bit, I think there's still a little bit of questions about that offense too, because remember, Kelvin Dean wasn't the full-time starter last year. And even in the Celebration Bowl, he played well. He was a threat in the passing game, but on the ground, he only had 10 yards on 3 attempts. So if we haven't seen him have consistency as the starter from week 1 to week 11, potentially week 12 in the SWAC championship game, and even in the Celebration Bowl. So we don't know what he's going to bring. We don't know if Jaquez Yant is potentially going to pass him up as the guy, depending on who gets more carries and stuff like that. And also, I don't know who the receivers are going to be. Because remember, Marcus Riley's gone. Jamaria Shareed is gone. So we don't know who's going to be there at the receiver position. We don't know how the chemistry is going to be, like I said before, on the offensive line, and how they're going to be able to protect Daniel Richardson. So I think there are some questions from that offense, just like there are going to be questions from the defense.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about when you're on top and everybody's going to be gunning for you, because that Florida A&M team last year had an unbelievable amount of swagger. Like they knew they were good. Like this is the same team that had a local Tallahassee rap legend shoot a video in the Bragg Stadium locker room without university permission. So it's clear that things have changed within Florida A&M's football program, but they're still the team to beat until otherwise noted. As far as, we'll talk about Norfolk State in a second, but I did want to get your thoughts on the overall matchup of these two teams in the MEAC SWAC Challenge, because the MEAC SWAC Challenge has done a great job of differentiating itself from the Celebration Bowl. Of course, this is the kickoff to Black college football season every year. And, being able to compete, well, not compete, because, they're both sponsored by Cricket. So, they're going to get probably the same amount of, publicity, but just how important was it for both of these conferences to be able to put on such a great event to start the season and still have people's appetites, whetted for the second weekend in December, at Mercedes-Benz Stadium?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's great for the city of Atlanta. I think it's great for the MEAC. It's great for the SWAC, for us to be able to come together and celebrate another year, just continuing to thrive. And as a community, I think it's amazing. It's always a great turnout. No matter where it is, no matter what game it is, there's always going to be a great turnout when you got the big 2 conferences when it comes to HBCU football in the MEAC and the SWAC. So I'm excited to get down there. Spoiler alert, I'll be there. In Atlanta to witness it firsthand. I've always enjoyed my experiences, except for in 2022 when it rained out. But yeah, I just love. There's nothing that beats the in-person experience. You can watch the bands play on through the TV. You could watch the game through the TV. But it's nothing like being in that stadium. It's nothing like feeling the electricity of the crowd and being able to be there for the very first game of HBCU football. I can't travel to Honolulu to see Delaware State play, but being there to see a new era for Florida A&M and Norfolk State, we'll preview the game later this week, but seeing Florida A&M usher in a new era and Norfolk State go up against expectations and really a lack of expectation. There's not much expected of Norfolk State. So this is basically, just we have nothing to lose. So let's just go out there and do whatever, and just have fun. So I'm interested to see how it turns out. I mean, obviously there's a overwhelming favorite, but as we've seen in the past, that doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. And yeah, that is the spoiler alert. Our team of publisher Ken Rashad, senior editor Kendrick Marshall, and the gentleman to my left, Jared Hoffman, will be in Atlanta. No, I'm not going to Hawaii. For anybody that knows that I'm a Delaware State alum, no, I will not be on that plane because, well, that's a long way to travel. What may not go very well. But on to our other quarterback story involving in the MEAC SWAC Challenge. Of course, Jared Otto Coons of Norfolk State will not be able to play in the first 4 games due to what we believe is an eligibility issue. And Jalen Daniels, a former South Carolina walk-on who put up some pretty good numbers at Garden City Community College last season, was named as the starter by Dawson Odoms today. And for Jared, like you said, there's really not a lot of expectations on this Norfolk State team. They're picked to finish 5th in the MEAC. So there's not a lot of, people that's believing in the Spartans. But one thing about Dawson Odoms is he always coaches his teams a level above what they're expected to do. So what do you think about the Coons situation, what Daniels can bring to this team, and how Norfolk State is going to try to balance these first 4 games out without the guy who was named first team all MEAC in the preseason selections?
Well, first of all, don't overthink anybody that saw him be named the first team all preseason. Don't overthink that. He's the only returning starting quarterback from last season. That's literally, I mean, no disrespect to the young man, but he's literally the only quarterback who started week 1 last season that is back for this season. So that's literally the only reason. They're not going to name a transfer first team all preseason. So that's that on that. As far as his situation, I can't really comment on his situation because there's not enough information out there about his situation. Everybody's being real vague about if this is a suspension at all, and if it is a suspension, what it's about, or if it's just an eligibility issue. So I don't want to speculate and say, whether or not this is an eligibility issue or if this is a suspension, because this is, I don't want to I don't know if I've already said that, but it's too much lack of information for me to comment on his situation. As far as how it affects Norfolk State, it affects them dearly because it was going to affect them it was going to be a tough task for them anyway, because they were going up against the reigning Celebration Bowl champions who are fighting with a chip on their shoulder because no one believes that they're going to go back to back. No one believes that they're going to go back to back. There's people talking about it's going to be Alabama State that could potentially be the team that could win the SWAC this season. So I think they were already up against the gun with that going up against them. But now you have the guy that was your starter who has had the reps, and you're replacing him with a guy who, like you said, had a great season for Garden City Community College last year. But I'm pretty sure this is going to be an entirely new system for him. This is an entirely new cast of characters that he has to work with. And I'm not sure when they found out this news. They said that they have known for a while that this could potentially happen. So I'm pretty sure they have been incorporating him in the practices, but you can't simulate in game. And you are going out there on the very first game of the season. It's different if he was filling in for him mid-season when you've already been in practice, for 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season. You are going out there in week 1 and you have to produce against the reigning SWAC champion and Celebration Bowl champions. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like for them to go out there, but I can say this, that there is no expectation for them. So there is no reason for them to be tight. There's no reason for them to be nervous. Well, there's going to be nervousness anyway because of the anticipation of the first game of the season. But as far as expectations for winning, just they could just go out there and have fun, and as long as they put out their best effort, there's nothing for them to be ashamed of, because this is not something that is normal for teams to have to go through.
What I would like to, just put out there for everyone that's watching and that will watch this is that I like what Dawson Odoms is doing. He's had to do it, but for one, you have 3 years of eligibility for Mr. Daniels. So Coons is a graduating senior anyway, so you are going to have to replace him after 2024 as is. You have a young man who played very well at Garden City, and as Coach Odom said in the MEAC coaches conference this morning, he said, you don't get recruited by the SEC unless they really see something in you. And he walked on in South Carolina. He didn't play. So he transferred to Garden City and put up some really good numbers. Completed 57% of his passes, nearly 1,300 yards passing, and 9 touchdowns. So he's not a flash in the pan. But at the same time, Iowa Northern Iowa or Iowa Central Community College is not the Florida A&M. It's a totally different ball game. So, but also, Norfolk State was 2-9 last year. 8 of those games came down to either the final possession or the final minute. So really, for them, we all saw it Labor Day weekend last year. That unbelievable. I still can't believe that's one of the wildest finishes I've ever seen in a college football game. The Labor Day Classic when Virginia State ran back the blocked field goal for the clinching touchdown. That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. So that was the if you were looking for a play that pretty much summarized Norfolk State's 2023, that would be it. But every other game, they were down they either came down to last possession or last minute. So it's really just a matter for them of finishing. And yes, having a veteran quarterback like Otto Coons would have helped. But at the same time, with a young man like Jalen Daniels, as Jared said, what do you have to lose? You're gonna be without Coons and you get 4 games to see if Daniels can be your guy of the future. So this is literally making a something out of nothing situation for Dawson Odoms in Norfolk State. So yeah, but we'll talk more about this game. Obviously, we've got more. Can't wait to announce what we have in store for you guys this week. We're focusing on our YouTube content. We've been doing good with that all summer, but as now the football season's here, we're really going to ramp it up a notch. Very excited for what we are all going to bring to you. But I did want to get to the Deacon Jones Award winners. The award nominees. And Jared wrote a story this week about a lot of the snubs, because there were a lot of snubs. And if you're not familiar, Deacon Jones was a great defensive lineman who played at both South Carolina State and what was then Mississippi Vocational College, which of course now is Mississippi Valley State. And of course, Deacon Jones played several years in the NFL with the Los Angeles Rams, part of that fearsome foursome defensive line. And he is the gentleman that came up with the term SAC for quarterbacks. So Deacon Jones, definitely, God rest his soul, earned the Hall of Fame, earned the all the accolades due to him, and that includes this National College Football Player Award. But we had a few HBCU snubs, and I know Jared has some guys he wants to talk about. So, Jared, who are some of the guys that stuck out to you that probably were deserving of nominations that didn't get those?
Yeah, it's really tough because there's a lot of guys who are gone from, the HBCU realm that probably would have been on this list. You have Davius Richard, the reigning winner, and the Jeremy Musa, the reigning co-winner, who's gone. You have Quentin Williams, who's gone. You have Ian Wheeler, who's currently playing for the Chicago Bears, who's gone. You have Willie Drew, who's gone. So there's a lot of names that probably a lot of names that they had to probably have to shuffle in that were returning that probably didn't have the biggest of roles last season. Of course, the usual suspects are on that list, but there was still quite a few names that didn't get mentioned. Benari Black for Johnson C. Smith. Just to get, we don't have a visual, so I'm just going to read from here and just give you my explanation for why each person is there. So Benari Black from Johnson C. Smith. For people who didn't pay attention to the CIAA last season, Johnson C. Smith was arguably the most improved team in Black college football last year. Had their first winning season since like 2014 or something like that, 2013, well over 10 years ago, the last time they had a winning season. And Benari Black was behind that, had 82 total tackles, 13 tackles for loss. He is going to be a sleeper pick for the CIAA Defensive Player of the Year. Kind of surprised that he didn't get mentioned because of, Johnson C. Smith's turnaround and the role that the defense played in that, where they were one of the top units in Division II football last season, and were definitely one of the top units in the CIAA. I think they were like second in scoring defense, probably behind Fayetteville State. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but they were definitely top two, if not one or two, maybe even, So Jaden Brockton for South Carolina State, who is transferring to South Carolina State from Benedict following, how did I forget his name? Chennisberry. Jesus Christ. He's following Chennisberry to South Carolina State. Had a monster season, had 56 tackles, 24 tackles for loss, and 10.5 sacks. For those who don't know, those are elite numbers at any level of college football. So I think they probably didn't give him that selection because he's moving up from Division II to the FCS level. I don't think that's much of an excuse. Just look at the numbers and see how dominant he was, and you give him his recognition. He was all conference coming from the SIAC, so I don't know why you don't give him that recognition. But South Carolina State ain't tripping. They had 4 players on that list anyway, so I don't think they're tripping about one guy being off, but I thought that Jaden Brogdon should have been on there. Cameron Davis of Virginia State. Everybody knows that the Virginia State, everybody who follows the CIAA knows that Virginia State's staple on the defensive end was their secondary, led by Willie Drew, who was a ball hawk, just leading a no-fly zone defense. But Cameron Davis was one of those just unsung heroes. I don't know why I was thinking of that term. One of the unsung heroes of the Virginia State defense, had 38 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks. It's going to have to pick up that production, but I thought he was a guy that was a sleeping giant that could potentially have a breakout season this year. Kelvin Dean, as we mentioned before, was a guy that was the MVP of the Celebration Bowl, and a guy that I think could have a big season for the A&M as the starting running back. Of course, he's going to have to prove it. He has not been a full-time starter at this level yet, so he's going to have a chip on his shoulder to prove that he is that guy that we saw in the Celebration Bowl. And just the speed pass, Keith Jenkins, part of that Morgan State defense, and just adds another dimension to what is already a dominant defense, and is a great in the return game. Also, Robert McDaniel for Jackson State, one of the best secondary units in all of the FCS in Jackson State. He comes from Alcorn State, so he's going to add to what is already a great unit at Jackson State. Irv Mulligan for Jackson State. I believe he transferred there last season from forget the name of the school. I think it's Watford, I think. I could be thinking of somebody else, but Irv Mulligan, he'll be in his second season as the second starting quarterback for Jackson State. And Devin Williams of Bowie State. This is not a homer pick at all. Not at all a homer pick. But Devin Williams, incredible season for Bowie State last season. Had 3 interceptions, 11 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles last year. So he'll be a big part of Bowie State trying to get back into contention into the CIAA. So those are the guys that I thought that warranted some mentioning. A couple of guys who were fairly unproven, a couple of guys that are very much proven, just for some reason didn't warrant mentioning. I'm looking at Jaden Brockton when I say that. So floor is you guys as to whether you agree or disagree with any of the guys that are on the list.
Well, I'll tell you what I saw from Benedict last year, and that Broughton kid, nasty. And going to South Carolina, I think what historical context is important when we talk about how people grade college levels, because before the NCAA split up into three divisions, which was 1973. If you're curious, there was Division One, there was college, which is of course was a combination of Division Two and FCS. FCS didn't come along until 1978 when it was 1AA, and then Division Three. Before that, you just had college. You had college football. That's what it was before 1973. And you have these kids. Well, they were kids back then, but you could get guys like Buck Buchanan from Grambling, Willie Lanier from Morgan State, Deacon Jones from South Carolina State and Mississippi Valley State. All these HBCUs that went on to become great athletes and great NFL players. And it wasn't because they were separated by division. I mean, yeah, they were still separated. I mean, this was the 60s, for crying out loud. Segregation was still a thing. That's why so many of our great athletes and Hall of Famers went to HBCUs, because they weren't, recruited by PWIs. Now that they're recruited by PWIs, you see that there's a separation in Division One. Well, now it's FBS, Football Bowl Series, FCS, Football Championship Subdivision, Division Two, and Division Three. Now it's clear that there's a line of demarcation, but that doesn't mean there's a line of demarcation for talent. Some kids are just at other schools for different reasons, and I feel like that's what probably tripped up Jaden Broughton on the Jones list, because anybody that watched Benedict's defense for a possession last year knew that he and Luber Danellis wreaked all kinds of havoc on that front four on that interior line. So Broughton, I feel like, is going to be a young man that's going to have a lot to prove. All those kids that transferred from Benedict are going to have something to prove at South Carolina State. I mean, they're following their coach. So, I mean, if anybody's discounting what South Carolina State can bring to the MEAC for 2024, they're sadly mistaken. Like I said, I named them the dark horse. It wouldn't surprise me if they won the whole conference. But, that's just my thoughts on Broughton. And ladies and gentlemen, our third man is here. No Hulk Hogan, but he is Kendrick Marshall. And I know he's got some thoughts on the Deacon Jones list. So, Kendrick, what's up, man?
I wouldn't compare myself to Hulk Hogan. I'm not going to rip my shirt off and say I'm going to vote for who in November at the RNC. But yeah, sorry I'm late. I have a toddler. That's why I'm late. Yeah, so for my money, I agree with like most of Jared's list. I couldn't believe Kelvin Dean was left off the list. He was the MVP of the Celebration Bowl last year. He's going to be a big part of the FAMU offense, considering, the announcement was made today to have a new starting quarterback and Daniel Richardson. So he's going to be a big part of what they do, and his production should increase as a result of it. Also, Irv Mulligan, not a homer pick, but he, especially in the second half of the season, carried that JSU offense on the ground. He didn't come into the program heralded, but he established himself as one of the top running backs in the SWAC. So I think those two were the kind of like the biggest omissions from the list, considering what they accomplished last season and kind of like the impact they had on their teams. But like this award every year is, especially at the beginning of the season, it's kind of like hard to know what players are going to be standouts and what player at the end of the season, unless you're Davis Richard or somebody like that, who's going to be the Black House Football Player of the Year. But I think this race is kind of like wide open to me. That despite the fact that Jada Byers has been on this list 5 years in a row, it seems like, I think like there's a deep roster of talented players across the HBCU spectrum. So it should be fun to find out like which players at the end of the season end up being the best.
So let's just ask that question. Who do you guys think is, if you had to go with a guy who was a favorite going into the season for the Deacon Jones Award, who would you say it is?
For me, it's probably Miles Crawley, considering he has been highly regarded, not just in Black college football circles, but also in FCS circles too. Alabama, he's going to be expected to lead his team to a conference championship and possibly a Celebration Bowl berth. Someone who transferred from Alabama State and now is at Grambling, he has kind of like settled down their program, I think, a little bit since coming over. Not a lot was expected of him when he first got there, but he kind of proved last season, hey, he can be the number one guy. He can be the reason why you win. And so right now, he, for my money, is going to lead the way until further notice, until somebody else pops up and try to knock him off that top spot.
For me, it's still Jada Byers. I mean, this is a young man who literally, when he was healthy last year, that Virginia Union team was unstoppable. Now that's the key. Can he stay healthy for a full 10? Well, 11 if you count the CIAA championship game, because we've all pretty much decided that anybody north of North Carolina has the best chance to win the CIAA this season. If you guys are just tuning in, there's no divisions this year, so it's just going to be the top two teams in the championship game. But yeah, Virginia Union, when Jada Byers is healthy, that is an unstoppable team. I mean, the young man, he's been among the top 5 every year. Seems like he's been in college football in total yards and touchdowns and things of that nature. So when you have a guy like that, that's your workhorse, that's your alpha. That's going to be a hard thing to stop. And if he can just put up if he can put up a typical Jada Byers season and not be carried off the field, then we're not just talking about a Deacon Jones winner. We're talking about an All-American. We're probably talking NFL draft pick. That's his ceiling to me. If he can stay healthy and his Virginia Union team wins the CIAA again, and if they can win maybe 1 or 2 Division II playoff games, and that pretty much just puts him in position to be one of those folks that are just on the eye, that the scouts have their eyes trained on. So my pick is Jada Byers.
Yeah, not much pushback from any of those picks. Both great picks. My question is, what will it take for a non-quarterback to win it? Because the last, all of them since, except for Chris Rowland. You had Chris Rowland, who won it in 2019, and of course the inaugural one, Tariq Cohen. Hope he's enjoying retirement. They're the only non-quarterbacks to win it. So you would think that Jada Byers, after his spectacular 2022 season, would have, warranted selection. But you had Shedeur Sanders, who was just phenomenal. So of course you can't, pick him ahead of, you can't pick Jada Byers ahead of Shedeur Sanders after the incredible season he had. So I think if what we're projecting for Miles Crawley, if that trend continues and he continues to develop his game and takes his game to another level, I don't know what Jada Byers could do to potentially overtake Miles Crawley. And an X Factor player who was also not on the list that I think is somebody that we should look out for is Andrew Body. If Alabama State performs the way that we think that they are going to perform, and Andrew Body is the player that we saw at Texas Southern, then he's a guy that I can see potentially, putting his name in that hat for the potential to be a Deacon Jones Trophy winner. But also what I want to see is I want to see a defensive player make a stake his claim to be the Deacon Jones Trophy winner. If there's anybody that I have faith in to be able to do that, it will be Eric Hunter from Morgan State. Morgan State is a team that I think will take a leap, that I think will put themselves into contention in the MEAC. And I think that they could be a dark horse pick to win the MEAC and get to the Celebration Bowl. So I think that Eric Hunter is going to have a big year if that is going to happen. And I think if he does that and puts up some spectacular numbers beyond what we saw from Terrell Allen, then I think he can be the best possible defensive pick for the Buck Buchanan Award.
Yeah, that Morgan State team, they just had a lot of a series of unfortunate events last year. They were this close to beating Akron, and then of course they lose their homecoming game because of some tragic circumstances. It just seems like everything that could go wrong after they beat Richmond did go wrong for Morgan State. But if anything we've learned about Damon Wilson, and Jarrett knows this gentleman very well, that he will build himself a roster that can compete with anybody. So yeah, North Carolina Central is the favorite. Yeah, Howard's the defending champion, but you can't discount Morgan. You can't discount South Carolina State. That is going to be a fun race, regardless of how people feel about the MEAC only having 6 teams or what have you. But that's still going to be a fun race, at least from the top 4. It could be the top 5 because Norfolk State still has some talent left on that defense. Offensively, we're still going to have to figure out what they do with the quarterback situation, as we discussed at the beginning of the program. But there's a lot to like about the MEAC. And as Jared said, Eric Hunter, he holds down that defense very, very well. And of course, they have Elijah Williams, another first teamer on the defensive line. So that Morgan State defense is, going to be really, really nasty this year, as they are every year.
And I'll give it to Kendrick real quick. But what do we always say about Morgan State? They are an offensive way.
Mm-hmm.
They are only an offensive way. If Taj Smith can come in, and I think they already named him as the week 1 starter. So if he can come in and he can develop a chemistry with that offense early, J.J. Davis, who transferred from Norfolk State, go figure, if he can have a big season for them, and I'm not sure who's going to be in that receiving core, Travion Pratt, he's gone on to pursue a pro career now. So we don't know who that receiving core is going to be. We don't know how well J.J. Davis is going to perform in his second season. This is going to be Taj Smith's first season as the starter going into the season now. So he has the weight of expectation to be good from week 1 rather than being good from week 8. You know what I mean? There's a big difference. So Morgan State is an offensive way, and this MEAC is wide open because everybody has questions. Everybody has roster turnover. So when it comes to who could be the Deacon Jones Trophy winner, it's all about who performs best as a team. Let's be honest. There's questions all around HBCU football. Other than Jada Byers and Miles Crawley, there's no established stars in HBCU football on the offensive end. On the defensive end, HBCU football, we specialize in defensive talent. Look at our history. We have defensive talent from top to bottom. But offensively, there's a lot of guys that could potentially stake their claim this year and have a unsung hero type of season and potentially put themselves in contention for the Deacon Jones Trophy. But if I had to put my money on it, I'd say Miles Crawley, because he's already proven that he can do it at the top level. All these other guys have to prove it. But I'm gonna give the reins back to Kendrick. He's the host. I don't be hosting like that. So
you're doing a good job, Jared. As far as like your earlier question goes in respect to why don't defensive players get a lot more respect as opposed to quarterbacks, I mean, like you look at any major award in college football, it's always a quarterback who's going to be at the top of the list. Look at the Heisman Trophy. That's a quarterback award pretty much. The last running back to win it maybe was like Derrick Henry, maybe, or Mark Ingram, one of the Alabama running backs from back in the day. Yeah, but the quarterback touches the ball every play. Normally, he has the most influence on the outcome of the game. Definitely impacts the offense the most, more so than any other player, individually at least. The offensive line, they're the real heroes of the offense. But like the quarterback, he gets all the glory. Wins and losses normally hang on him. So that's why quarterbacks are kind of like more valued than any other position on the football field. So I agree with you, Jared. I think Miles Crawley right now is the favorite to win an award, depending on the season that he has coming up in 2024. I'm not sure where you guys are because I was late. But I think like, oh yeah, Trent, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Alabama running back. He could not find the hole at all for the Colts when he was running
contact. He just loved contact. But he wasn't the last one, though. It was actually Derrick Henry who was the last.
Derrick Henry. Okay. I think it was one of them. And Derrick Henry's still going strong after taking all that abuse at Alabama, man. That's remarkable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, like I was saying, I don't know where y'all left off in the show, but
so we have talked about the FAMU quarterback situation, and we talked about Otto Coombs. We don't know if it's a suspension or eligibility issue, but he's going to miss the first 4 games. So if you wanted to weigh in on that, we talked about Florida A&M and we talked about Norfolk State already.
Yeah, speaking of which, I did an interview this afternoon actually with Virginian pilot, Norfolk State, and Hampton reporter Michael Solis, who actually broke the story yesterday that Otto Coombs will not be playing in the MEAC SWAC Challenge, as well as the first 4 games of the regular season. A synopsis pretty much is that right now we don't know exactly what it is, but it does sound academic in nature just by the comments from Dawson Oldhams to him and today on the MEAC coaches call. I can play maybe like a couple of minutes of my interview with him, explaining a little bit about the situation. that's facing Norfolk State in a quarterback position, and whether or not they actually have a chance to beat FAMU this weekend down in Atlanta. And let me see if I can pull that video up. We're doing this live, so it's always precarious.
Well, while we're putting that up, please, folks, if you're still here, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, comment, can. Go to HBCUsports.com for all the latest news in HBCU sports. We'll have all the coverage of the MEAC SWAC challenge this week. We're still putting out season previews. We're doing all the things to prepare for the HBCU football season. It's an exciting time. This is the time that we live for at HBCU Sports for the kickoff of the HBCU football season. We got a lot to look forward to this year, and I would love for you all to be along for the ride. So tap in with us whenever you can.
That's a great segue, Jared. So I got the video up ready to go, and we can play it right now. So Michael, you wrote last night that Norfolk State, just a couple of days before the season opener against FAMU, will be without their quarterback Otto Coons for the first 4 games of the season. Can you explain what happened there and why he won't be playing in the first 4 games?
Yeah. So first off, thanks for having me. But the second, I guess, with the stuff with Otto, we had Norfolk State had their Fan Fest yesterday afternoon, and there had been a quarterback battle throughout camp where it was kind of 1 and 2 were going to be, any given day. It was Otto Coons or the JUCO transfer Jalen Daniels. And yesterday, Coach Dawson Odoms announced that Jalen Daniels is going to be the starter, which, naturally is, hey, your first team all MEAC preseason quarterback, what's going on with him? And Coach Odoms told us that it was an NCAA ruling that he's going to have to sit out the first 4 games. It kind of makes it seem like it was an academic thing. I asked the follow-up. I said, hey, 1, was this an NCAA ruling? 2, was this an academic thing? Like, can you share any details? And his quote was a little vague. I have it pulled up. He said, yeah, it comes from so many hours that you got to pass the previous season, and then talks about how they try to get it reduced, but you kind of have to deal with whatever the NCAA gives you. I did ask Norfolk State for like an official reason to clarify, but they didn't have one last night. But I don't want to speculate anything, but just off of the hours comments, it makes me feel like it was an academic thing. But regardless of what the specific reason is, yeah, Otto Coons will be out the first 4 games of the 2024 season for Norfolk State.
Yeah, they're playing FAMU on Saturday down in Atlanta, Georgia at the MEAC SWAC Challenge. How does that not having Coons available for that game kind of like impact them moving forward?
I think it impacts them, but only to an extent. I felt like, based off of what I was able to watch during camp, that it really was a 1A, 1B type thing with Jalen Daniels and Otto Coons. So, yes, Otto Coons was the starter the past 2 seasons. Yes, he was a preseason All-MEAC. But at the same time, it kind of felt like they knew, and I think Coach Odom said something like that today, where he knew this was probably going to be a possibility. So they've been preparing Jalen Daniels to kind of be the starter all of camp. At least that's the vibe that I got from practice. Any practice that I went out to, it seemed that Jalen Daniels was taking the bulk of the reps with the ones, and Otto Coons was right behind him. I know Odom said that they took equal reps and they were kind of 1A, 1B throughout camp, and that they were relatively equal during team scrimmages and everything. So I think that this, yes, they will certainly miss Otto Coons' experience, just from that case and standpoint. But I think this team and this offense is fully capable of succeeding with Jalen Daniels under center still.
So Jalen Daniels is a transfer quarterback from Garden City Community College in Kansas. What should folks know about him?
I mean, just from what I've seen, he's got a good arm, and he's a mobile guy. I think people are excited to see what he can do around this team. I know it's something where, he was at South Carolina as a freshman, but he was a walk-on and didn't play. So the bulk of his experience is at JUCO with Garden City. But I think he has a lot of potential. So it's really, I think we're all going to find out at the same time what he's going to look like, 1, at the D1 level, and 2, in this offense. But just based off the conversations I've had, I mean, I know Jason Phillips, the new offensive coordinator at Norfolk State, is very high on him. Throughout camp, he said that he felt like this offense can win games with Otto or Jalen under center. So I think everybody's confident in him, and I think we're all going to kind of learn what kind of player he is at the same time.
Yeah, so that was Michael Sauls from the Virginia Pilot talking about the Norfolk State quarterback situation. That's only part of a extended interview I did with him earlier today. The full interview will be available on our YouTube channel tomorrow morning, so make sure you like this channel, subscribe to it. You'll be able to see it tomorrow morning. We'll talk about, Dawson Odom possibly be on the hot seat. Will Norfolk State actually be better than they have been the last couple of years? So check that out on our website when you get a chance. So, fellas, what do you think about what Michael said about the confidence that Dawson Odom and the staff kind of has in QB2 heading into the regular season opener?
Well, that was something that, I tried to ask him. Keyword tried. I tried to ask him about it at the MEAC coaches call this morning, but he was very non-committal about anything of that nature. He would just say that the motto for that Norfolk State team is still the same: chop wood and carry water. And from what it sounds like, from what Michael Saul said, is that this was going to probably end up happening anyway. And that's not, to slight Otto Coons in the slightest, because he had a really good year for Norfolk State last year. But it felt like Daniels was a contingency plan. If you guys are just tuning in, Jared and I talked about where I felt like this was the best case scenario for Norfolk State, because, as Jared said, they're playing with nothing to lose. And it's important to note that Mr. Daniels is a sophomore, so he has 3, possibly 4 years of eligibility left, depending on, what if he decides to try to appeal, because the COVID year is done after this year, just if anybody's wondering. But 3 years of eligibility for a young man that's 6'5", 220, that by all accounts can throw the football. It's a good find. And Coons is a graduating senior anyway, so it really doesn't. So they were going to have to be in this position again at the end of 2024 that they already knew they were going to be in at the end of 2023. So nothing wrong with a little insurance policy here in college football and college sports, because as we know, the transfer portal is always popping. So these kids, they will be glad to, test the open market. And Daniels, if he can put together a good season for Norfolk State, then that's found money for them. So we'll like Michael said, we'll see Saturday what Jalen Daniels has to offer. But if Norfolk State is high on him, and Dawson Odom hasn't given us a reason to doubt him yet, I feel like we'll find out just how good he is on Saturday. Is
that fair to say? I mean, Norfolk State is 11-23 since he took over as head coach. There's definitely reason to doubt him since coming over from Southern. I mean, do they have a chance against FAMU? I know FAMU going in with a new quarterback too, and they got to change over their roster as well. But does this help them at all against the Rattlers coming up on Saturday?
I didn't have much faith in them when Otto Coons was their starter, so I'm not having much faith now that they have a quarterback change. Even if they knew in advance, I didn't think that they had much of a chance to beat Florida A&M. I think this is going to play out for Florida A&M like Jackson State did last season when they went against South Carolina State. I think this is going to be their chance to, give them a little tune-up before they get into their real test of the season. You know what I mean? I think Norfolk State, if they have any chance of winning, it has to be a clean game. It has to be a complete clean game. And we've seen against that dark cloud defense, it's much different now than it was last season. But we've seen that dark cloud defense can cover a multitude of sins, even when the opposing team is playing a perfect game up until the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? The most important thing that this young man is going to have to figure out: do not throw Kendall Bowler's way. Do not throw his way, because if you throw his way, you're going to have to. That ball is probably going to get intercepted. 30%.
The voice of God says they have a 30% chance.
Hey, You doing that Steiner math, boy? I see you. But I just think one, he's gonna have to don't throw Kendall Bowler's way. Two, get out of the pocket. Get it. Well, not get out of the pocket. Get the ball out of your hands. You cannot. If the play takes too long to develop, Florida A&M is gonna nip it in the bud. They're gonna put it into that play. And three, they're probably gonna have to deal with an offense that is a sleeping giant. We don't know what Daniel Richardson's going to bring. Also, if you missed it, Daniel Richardson was named Florida A&M's starting quarterback heading into the MEAC SWAC Challenge. So we don't know what Daniel Richardson is going to bring. He could potentially be a Shedeur Sanders type player where he is coming from being a top recruit player and had success elsewhere that comes into the team like Jeremy Musa did, like who's another FBS transfer who came into HBCU football, like a Devontae Kincaid, for those who remember that. You know, he could potentially be that, or he could be just another guy that can't cut it at this level. But we've seen him have success elsewhere. There's no reason for me to believe he's not going to have success here. So they're going to have to deal with that. A guy who is proven, who is coming to a Florida A&M team, who has the confidence of knowing that they are championship caliber. So I say all that to say, with all that stacked against Norfolk State, I didn't have faith in them going into it that they were going to win this game. I thought this was going to be their chance to let it all loose and throw caution to the wind, knowing that they have nothing to lose. But as far as their chances of winning, I mean, it's the MEAC SWAC Challenge. Of course, they have like some kind of chance, but I don't think that they have a good chance. I know I'm talking in circles, so y'all probably didn't even understand nothing.
Like I was in Atlanta last year at last year's game, and we all thought that maybe South Carolina State had a chance against Jackson State because Jackson State had a new coach, had a new quarterback, and then the game started, and then we found out, oh yeah, Jackson State is actually better than South Carolina State despite all the changes and not having Deion anymore. And I think it's going to play out the same way Saturday. Florida A&M is going to be better than Norfolk State, despite not having Willie Simmons, despite not having Jeremy Musa on the football team anymore, because they're a deeper, better, more veteran team. Despite the fact that Norfolk State does return I think Michael said 84 players from last year's team, but that team finished with a losing record last year. So I don't know how good those guys are going to be heading into this one, but it's definitely going to be an uphill battle for them, not only for that game, but for the rest of the season. So we'll see how it plays out on Saturday, but I'm not going to sit here and predict no upset. I got FAMU win. I don't know what the score is going to be, but I think the Riders going to take it.
Yeah, we'll get more in depth later this week, but I think we all know who our predictions are going to be for the winner.
Yeah, that's for sure. In our last topic of the night, we're going to talk a little bit of NASCAR, Black College style. NASCAR announced that in 2025, they're going to have a short track race at Bowman Gray Stadium, which is also the football stadium for Winston-Salem State University. And they've been having these races there for years, apparently, if you go through history. This will just be the latest installment of that. I know Chris want to talk about this in particular because it could impact Rams football for next season. Don't know based on how the schedule plays out. So, Chris, got some strong thoughts on this. What do you make of NASCAR invading Black College football territory in a sense?
Well, as I told my colleagues before we hit the air today, I'm a conspiracy theorist when it comes to things like this. And in my opinion, this is going to be trouble for Winston-Salem State trying to rebuild that football program, because it wasn't that long ago. Well, 12 years ago in the grand scheme of things is a little bit of a while, but wasn't that long ago that Winston-Salem State was competing for a Division II national championship. And they've been trying to get back to that level of success ever since. And part of having a good football team or having a good college team in any sport is having the facilities. And the city of Winston-Salem used to run Bowman Gray. Now a entity that is known for auto racing now is in ownership of Bowman Gray Stadium. And NASCAR's history is North Carolina history, basically. That's where it all started. You had short tracks in places like Winston-Salem, North Wilkesboro, a few other places. And this feels like a test of the waters. Because if you're going to have, it's a preseason race, so it's not like it's going to be for the cup. If you guys follow the cup chase at all, the way NASCAR has now, NASCAR has a playoff system. Everybody has a playoff system. So it's interesting to see where this goes. But, just my mind, from a conspiracy theorist standpoint, that now that a racing entity runs the stadium, what's going to stop them from saying, okay, Winston-Salem State, you can't use this anymore. Gone. And where would that leave the Rams football program? Because it's not like there's a lot of great. I haven't been down to North Carolina in years. I need to get back down there. I actually want to move down there at one point in time, but that's another story for another day. But to me, it feels like this. Hopefully I'm wrong, but it just feels like if a NASCAR entity is moving back into Bowman Gray, then what's going to stop them from trying to kick Winston-Salem State out from using that stadium? We're trying to break the program in order for them to use the stadium. So those are my thoughts on it, and I'd love to know what you guys think in that regard.
Yeah, like you're right. NASCAR is North Carolina's history. The NASCAR Hall of Fame is actually in Charlotte, where I live right now, and NASCAR has a tremendous following in this city and in this state. Very rabid fans. Also, NASCAR in this history embraces Confederate history too. We can't forget about that. There's many videos and pictures of NASCAR races. You see the bleachers and the grandstands filled with Confederate flags over the place. Don't seem too inviting to black people, I say. But yeah, as I said before, like NASCAR has a history at Bowman Gray, going all the way back to the 40s, I believe. So they have a relationship with Bowman Gray Stadium and Winston State. So obviously there's a rapport there to some degree. And I know like NASCAR is trying to do different things, trying to break into different markets, trying to attract a different type of fan. So you never know. This may be kind of a way for them to do that. I know they had a race in Chicago and down in Chicago earlier this year. So they're trying different things, trying to attract new viewership, new people to the sport. But I'm also a conspiracy theorist in some things. I don't know too much about NASCAR in the same as anything as Chris does, but I do know it's an opportunity that Winston State should take advantage of. If they can work out some type of partnership with NASCAR to help out the university, get more exposure to the school, things like that, that'll be great. I know NASCAR has embraced HBCUs. I know some NASCAR drivers have had like HBCU logos on their vehicles in recent years to try to promote black causes. So that could be another way to get some exposure for schools too. But I'm gonna look at this through rose-colored glasses and kind of see what benefits come from it once this happens next year. Jared, what are your thoughts on it?
I am not a conspiracy theorist. I know nothing about NASCAR, so I honestly don't know what to make of this. Quite honestly, what I do know is Winston-Salem State has been in that stadium a long time, a very long time. So, could this be a play to get them kicked out of the stadium? I honestly don't have enough information to be able to, make that opinion. You know what I mean? But I sure hope not. I definitely hope not, because I'm not familiar with Winston-Salem State. I have family in Fayetteville, but I don't have, much ties to Winston-Salem. But I'm not sure what the next option would be if Winston-Salem were to be kicked out of the stadium. That's even if that is an option, if that's something that could potentially happen, so I can't really speak too much on it, but hope the best for Winston-Salem and that it works out for them in the end, and that, they're able to continue to play the games in the stadium, and that this NASCAR deal doesn't damper that deal that they have.
Yeah, for me, like I think concern will lie in if NASCAR was having multiple events at Bowman Gray Stadium throughout like the year. But this seems like a one-time thing, and facilities normally will like have events not related to their main events at the facilities. Like for example, like Wrigley Field hosting like like hockey or football like once a year, something like that. And if NASCAR wants to come in with the same state once a year, that's fine. But like if they think about coming there multiple times a year, that's when you got to start to think they may want to take over. But for now, I guess we got to wait and see on that one. Fellas, any final thoughts on any topics that we've had tonight? Everybody, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your watching us and listening to us and your input on the comments. Guys, any final words for wrap up?
This is going to be a good year for us. I mean, we've already discussed that we've got a lot of, different programming coming. I mean, we're still going to be writing, of course, but of course we're going to, really ramp up our faces. We're going to be more visible on this particular channel to make sure you guys know who the faces and the voices are behind the stuff that you read every day. So we are very excited for Black college football this season. There's a lot to like about everything in the CIAA, the MEAC, the SIAC, the SWAC, and we look forward to bringing it to you. So don't be afraid to subscribe to this channel, follow us on all manners of social media, all that good stuff. I'm just excited. I mean, we're really going to turn it up this year. We're really excited to bring you guys along for the ride.
Only thing I got to add is shout out to Rajah Caruth. That's the only NASCAR driver I know. Him and Danica Patrick. That's the only NASCAR drivers I know. But
you see even race anymore?
No, she's done.
I don't think she raced no more. But those the only two people I know in NASCAR. But but seriously, like I'm looking forward to this HBCU football. I'm looking forward to this HBCU academic year. I'm looking forward to paying attention to all the sports and getting all the nominees together for our HBCU Sports Awards. Stay tuned to that. For that, you won't have to stay tuned for a long time, but I'll be watching throughout the year for all the top performers throughout this academic year. I'm just excited for the academic year. I'm excited to get the season rolling. Everybody's in classes now, and we're getting into the academic year. Now the athletic year starting this Saturday with it started with volleyball, but I'm looking forward to getting down to Atlanta and checking out the MEAC SWAC challenge and seeing if Norfolk State can shut us up and get a win against Florida A&M. I'm not too big to say that I was wrong. So if Norfolk State goes out there and they get a win, I'll be right here on this camera and say, you made me look stupid. So I'm excited to see what this young man, dang, I forgot his name already. But
Jalen Daniels.
Jalen Daniels. I'm excited to see him. I think I wrote that article too that he was going to be his replacement. But anyway, I'm excited to see him get his chance and this opportunity to make a name for himself. All you need is one opportunity. All it takes is one game to make a name for yourself, and this is his chance. So I'm excited to see that unfold and everything that unfolds throughout this academic and athletic season.
Yeah, just echoing the sentiments of Chris and Jared. I'm excited too for the start of another academic and athletic year. Not so much excited about like the weather changing, going from fall to winter. I don't get excited about that. That's the only downside of this time of year. Like you're excited about football season coming, but then you wake up in the morning, it's a chill in the air. You're like, crap, winter's coming. But winter's coming, which means football and tailgating and fun. That's what we're all about here. We're all about having fun, and like Chris said, like got some things coming down the pipeline for football season throughout the year. So stay tuned for that. And once again, like and subscribe to the channel to see all of our videos like this one in the upcoming program that we're going to have for you guys starting this week. And it's going to be very, very exciting. I'll tell you that much. I'm Kendrick. Yeah, foreshadowing. It's called a tease in business.
Powwow.
A powwow. That was the word used by our fearless leader Ken Rashad today. He said powwow, and I'm like, what millennial uses that word? Well, I mean, like they're coming back with the word demure now for some reason. I don't know why.
And be very mindful of that.
Yeah, gotta be very mindful of that. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah. Thanks for watching, people. We appreciate all the time you spend with us each and every week. Read our website, all the stories we're going to have coming up about the MEAC SWAC Challenge and other things going on in Black College sports. I'm Kendrick. That's Chris. He's Jared Hoffman. We're out.